All right. Hello, everyone. Today is 11th of October, and this is the Green Reviews Working Group meeting under the CNCF TAG Environmental Sustainability. A few practical details to begin with. I would like to remind everyone that we are operating under the CNCF Code of Conduct, which can be summed up to just be nice and kind to each other. And my name is Christina, and I am the host of this meeting today. Who would like, is there anyone who would like to take the initiative in taking notes for today's meeting?
That would be really wonderful if anyone would like to take notes.
I can take notes.
Thank you.
This is great, Antonio. Thank you. So I have also added the link to the meeting doc in the chat, so please add yourselves to the attendee list if you haven't done that. And then we can kick it off. We have quite a few participants today, despite the Cloud Native Sustainability Week that is ongoing as we speak, and this is really great. So welcome to everyone who is here for the first time and not, and maybe we could use a few minutes. For those of you who are here for the first time, maybe you could just go on mute and just say hi to us and tell a few words about yourself.
I can start. I'm William Rizzo. I'm based in the Netherlands. I'm working at SUSE as a lead consulting architect, and that was me in a nutshell, I suppose.
Great to have you here, William. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
I can go next.
Yes,
Hello, everyone. My name is Randesh Guru. I'm based out of Seattle. I work for VMware and currently engineering manager on Cloud Health product for VMware. It's a cloud cost optimization offering. And I joined from a cloud security background and looking at the cloud spend and understanding 30% of that is a waste, that doing back of the napkin math, that was close to billions of dollars every year, and converting that to just simple math again, that's 2 billion trees impacted and 20 million cars. So it was a significant impact to the environment, and that's what got me curious about this whole space. And I reached out to Nikki and Ross as well, and thank you so much for getting me here. So I'm really excited to be part of this community and looking forward to contributing.
This is awesome. Welcome. Thank you. Anyone else who would like to introduce themselves?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So yes, my name is Francisco Riveros. I'm from Hamburg, Germany, working for Deutsche Telekom as a senior cloud architect. I work in this company and also for Google. And yeah, I was in the meetup with Leo yesterday about about sustainability and all this stuff. I mean, I'm really driving this since a long time. Besides my work with Google. So yeah, I have created a web page for that. I mean, sustainable clouds, sustainable-cloud.com, where I try to kind of embrace and share this information to anyone. I mean, all about the hyperscalers and what they are doing with sustainability and so on. And yeah, I'm happy to be with you. Happy to also contribute and help. And yeah, really, yeah, thank you for this invitation.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome. Anyone else? I can at least say that today we have also the members from the Falco team here, so which is really great. We are very excited to get this dialogue going also as part of these meetings. We have Melissa here, at least that I know is from the Falco team. I'm not sure if anyone else from the Falco team apart from you is here today, Melissa.
So I think going forward, I will be the primary contact attending these meetings. And as we have focused discussions, I will ask other members to join.
This is great. Yes, welcome. And thank you for finding the time to join today. Great. If no one else would like, you can also drop a message in the chat if you don't feel like going on loud and introducing yourself. So once again, welcome to everyone, to all the new members. We have quite a long agenda list of the topics we want to discuss so very much with the Falco team. So we will try to get efficient and see where this goes. But one recurring topic we can take from before we do that is the status update since the last working group meeting. Nikki, would you be interested in taking this update today or?
Yeah, so where we are so far, also for newcomers, we have access to the Equinix project. So there's 4 people who have console-wide access, and we are also looking at how to manage access for this account. We're going to go with API keys that we can use from the repo and that we can then use with infrastructure as code tooling, so that we can have a PR process and like in a GitOps way, and then apply those changes to our infrastructure. So we're still working on that. We have a contact from Equinix who is helping us. We're also looking into the requirements for Falco to determine the best like machine type and that we should use through Equinix. Ross and I are also looking into which tooling to use. So we're looking at Cluster API, but we're also, well, primarily we're looking at Cluster API. Terraform would have been great, but unfortunately we can't do that due to the licensing issue. But first Ubuntu 22.04 is good. I agree. We're just looking into the hardware aspect, making sure that we are getting the right machine types compared to the requirements. And essentially what we need to do next is to establish how we're going to do the pipeline. So we're going to have the Falco tests. We can do that on like deploy CNCF projects on a node level and try to have as much isolation as possible using like taint intolerations and namespaces. Or we can work on the cluster level, but I think we discussed with Ross that would be too much overhead. So we're going to go 1 node per CNCF project to begin with. But please leave there's a comment that goes more in depth, and it would be great if you'd like to read it on your own time and give us feedback. Also, if you could, yeah, I'm gonna try to write the comment, what you're writing in the chat. Could we say?
Shall I open the comment or?
Actually, that I'm just going over it. Ubuntu 22.04 works. Yep.
Oh, maybe it's easier. So just the kernel version. I think the only requirement we said was creator equal to kernel 5.8, so that we can also test the more modern eBPF features. So that's fine. Ubuntu also works. The one thing I will say though is that I think most companies use more RPM-based distros. One consideration, but just from our side, there is no problem with Ubuntu as distro. And regarding the hardware, there's probably more details, but the only one we care about is the architecture, x86-64, ARM64. Both would work. We support both. But again, I think x86-64 is more common and maybe the better choice at the beginning. And well, before stealing the thunder, you giving more updates, but I've been reading a little bit through the documentation, and one call out Nikki made was how to deploy Falco realistically, and she just, mentioned a little bit about it. And I would just say, just let us deploy Falco as a daemon set. That's most adopters deploy it that way, and that gives us the most flexibility. And that way, the other requirement of having libbpf studs enabled, we could then do it out of our highly privileged container. So that's all details I can also write down. So I think we're good from the requirements point of view.
Good. Yeah, the next question is the pipeline, but William, you have your hand up.
Sorry. Sorry, I kind of got into this through the recording of last meeting, and then I was trying to catch up. But what is the target of the green review? What are we trying to measure?
What? Yeah, who Christian, do you want to?
That's the same who does that, but I'm not sure if you have seen this document, William, or if you had time to go through it, but at least maybe we can give you a quick summary, and then you can take a look at kind of this drawing and all the details outlined in the document, and also for those of you who are new to the meeting today and may not have seen this document. Kind of the goal of the working group is to perform to build tooling and to build a workflow that we could use in order to measure the sustainability footprint of the CNCF projects, so that we could have a statistics over how sustainable every CNCF project in the landscape is, and kind of also see the evolvement over time. And we have a proposal for how this workflow could look like, where we could offer us for instance, a GitHub action that could utilize the resources provided by the specific CNCF project that we would be targeting for measurement, like for instance the test suite, and then this GitHub action could spin up the environment that is needed, set up the tool, perform the measurements under the specific load tests that is really production realistic for that tool, and then calculate the sustainability specific measurements, and then kind of create some kind of a score. This is still we're still outlining the design, so there are still not everything is clear yet, but that would be generating some kind of statistics based, for example, from the measurements that Kepler would generate, that would also be based on Prometheus metrics and eBPF related metrics, and then we could publish that statistic somewhere, like for instance at DevStats CNCF. And Falco was willing to collaborate with us and be kind of the first pilot project. So Melissa, together with the rest of the Falco team, are involved in kind of helping us to figure out how this implementation would look like, and what do we need in order to build something that actually makes sense and works in real life towards the tools like Falco also in a production scenario, so that the data we generate would make sense and be actually useful in order to improve the CNCF projects, basically, from the sustainability perspective.
Thanks, Chris. This is a very good explanation. I'm sorry for not going through the document. I didn't know there was a document explaining all this. But
No worries.
After all of this, it is few months that I'm going through some thinking regarding how to calculate how sustainable code and deployments are. Are we taking into account also a generalized or specific carbon footprint map? And when I say that, I mean that each country, unfortunately or fortunately, have a different number when it comes down to kilowatt per hour against carbon footprint. So the 3 kilowatt hour will have a different carbon footprint in Netherlands that will have in Norway or in the United States. Is that something that is of relevance to this as well, or are we taking that into
This
account?
is at the moment we're focusing on the runtime energy consumption as the first metric, hence why we're using Kepler. We haven't, like, we're kind of using the SCI, the Software Carbon Intensity Index, as a guiding principle, but we're focusing first on the operational
Pipeline.
energy metric, and the
Okay.
carbon aspect would potentially be part of the measurement since that's part of the STI. However, currently we have to focus on energy.
Got it. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. I think the next point we can discuss in the agenda would be the testing. Christina, do you think, like, yeah.
Yeah, since we have Melissa here, probably it would make sense
Yes.
that we try to cover what we need input from. Sorry if you have any questions. We will try to take it as we go.
Yes.
But just so that the group is aware, Melissa will not be able to be here for every meeting, so we will try to take it in batches. So that's why we would like to go through some of the points to kind of ensure that we get some input to be able to proceed.
If little asterisk, William, if you wish to go further into the metrics and which metrics we should gather next to energy consumption and how to create that SCI calculation or more holistic calculation, we should open a ticket, I think, to discuss that, because it is in the design doc, we have an empty section to discuss and specify the metrics further. So that's a good action item.
Maybe Nikki, there's also a good segue. So we just discussed like deploying as a daemon set. I don't think we need to go into more details. It's, you know, gonna be async discussion, but regarding the metrics. So the energy consumption, that's great, and I'm super excited to see it. However, when you talk to SREs, that number doesn't mean anything to them, and they don't know it's something new. So I was proposing at the beginning that we also emit metrics that SREs and infrastructure people are used to knowing and they can relate to, and perhaps over time that those new metrics become more popular and they hold more meaning. So that means in particular the standard metrics like CPU usage, memory usage as in RSS, VSC, PSS, and also the container memory working set when we talk about Kubernetes. So those are just a very few metrics that would make sense to emit. And then every project probably also has more specialized metrics they also want to emit out of these tests. So for example, people who don't know much about Falco, it's a kernel security monitoring tool. So there's a part that runs in the kernel and hooks into trace points. And that maybe also goes ahead to the next bullet point here. What's the functional unit for Falco? So for Falco, it's very different than a lot of projects. For us, the functional unit is the kernel event rate. So the more workloads are running on the server, the more resources will Falco utilize. It's a pretty simple equation, I would say. We've run multiple tests. I mean, there's some caveats as in the particular syscalls, certain workloads invoke, but by and large, I would say just the rate of syscalls, regardless of which one, that makes Falco consume more events, and we have to do more processing and all of that. And Nikki and Christina, how we could approximate this. specifically for Falco, I would propose to use libppf stats. So libppf is in the kernel tree, and those statistics are officially supported by the kernel. So it's nothing special we cooked, and that's always a good thing. Falco does emit those metrics internally. So we have an internal metrics feature, which is similar to Prometheus, as in you can define sort of like cron tab, and it emits kind of kernel side drops, user space drops, event rates, and I don't know, a whole bunch of other metrics, and also natively CPU and memory usage. But we will also have this externally. Or we can use a BPF tool. So we can also run this separately and run snapshots every so often, and we will get the same metrics as in the kernel event rate, which we will approximate by the system call enter exit trace point event rate, basically. And I'm just going to pause now for a second and just for all I said, if you have questions before proceeding.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. There was a very, very nice introduction to that. That sounds reasonable to me, at least when it comes to the functional unit that you proposed. It makes sense. And also, as Leo mentioned in the chat, that it makes sense to kind of start with all the metrics that we can get and have available at this point that also can kind of make meaning to SREs and the infrastructure and the new engineers. And then once we get it, get this tooling for more projects in the CNCF landscape, we could adjust this and refine the metrics that we could use or select from. So +1 to that.
Christina, do you track these traditional resource utilization metrics as what you said, Prometheus metrics, or how do you track those? Or what's the term you want to use going forward?
I don't think we kind of have come that far to actually define what we are going to use for the for the calculation. Therefore, we were trying to gather some information that is specific for Falco right now. And then kind of look into how we could get it into the how we are going to use it for calculation. I think we have a separate item for kind of figuring out how we're going to calculate it. There was some discussion on that we should maybe create a project on the side or a utility on the side that would do that. So we don't have yet a very clear answer to that, I guess. But hopefully with this information, we could have more in the coming weeks, I think.
Perfect. I mean, since you're using Prometheus, by the way, I'm not an SRE, I'm a security engineer, but I'm happy to help and check. I'm just suspecting it's not too difficult to set up so that for every project over Prometheus with some configurations and settings and enabling things, you will get these traditional SRE metrics, because most companies kind of use that for that. And again, we also emit this internally through a Falco binary itself.
I think Prometheus is what we were considering to use, and also since we want to expose those metrics to websites of the CNCF. The name is escaping me right now, but it's a Grafana dashboard, so it would make sense to have Prometheus as a data source for that dashboard.
So from my side, there would be no more questions regarding the metrics. That sounds all perfect. Energy, traditional SRE metrics, however you want to call it. Amazing. And it also seems you're okay with using the libppf stats. Just we can maybe we just call it kernel event rate to have it more future proof instead of calling it syscall event rate. Because there can also be different kernel hook points you may be interested in hooking into than just system calls.
Because we were also considering using Kepler together with the CNCF project that we're deploying, and that also uses libppf. So we haven't use it together to see how the two would interact, but I don't imagine there would be any issue.
Nope. I don't even know if there is an upper limit to the number of BPF programs you can run. And also every single project usually or typically loads multiple programs. So Falco doesn't just load one BPF program, there's several parts to it. But again, those are technical details. I would also be happy to write out, or maybe in one of the future meetings, I can ask Andrea from our team to explain a bit more the details of eBPF in general and Falco. And maybe we can also look into Kepler, which I haven't had time yet.
I think there is no limit. Since eBPF emits a large volume of data, that might be the only thing we should be wary of. But at the same time, we're going to have very targeted.
One question here. One comment, William. It's the instruction limit, so it's not the limit of eBPF programs you can load. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the instruction limit of the
so
program.
You have to do
each program would have to do only up to 1 million. Yeah, and eBPF and BPF should be 4,096.
Yep, and then you just have to keep doing tail calls to work around it. That's the fun.
Is that 1 million instructions per program per like a time frame, or in
no, one
context?
So one eBPF program would have a begin and an end. Let's say it should start and they always have to terminate. And between that start and termination, they can go up to 1 million instructions. So, but if you think about if and else loops, they grow exponentially because each if and else loop would grow, the power of 2 each time condition is not met. So it grows. It seems like a big number, but it grows where it's not that big. I don't know if I answered.
Yeah. Yes, that does make sense. Thank you. Christina, do you want to follow up with anything?
I think it would at least be very beneficial if, like you mentioned, Melissa, if someone from the Falco team could actually come and give an introduction, for example, to eBPF and also eBPF in context of Falco, because I know that there are some working group members who do not have a lot of experience with eBPF, including myself, not on that hardcore level, other than just using tools that are using it. So I would also find it beneficial for myself as well, getting more of the technical details behind it, and also specifically in context of Falco. So if you would be able to get someone from the team to do that, that would be really huge help for multiple members here.
Perfect. I'll ask Andrea what meeting would be best, perhaps already the next one or the following.
Yeah, maybe we can just create an action item on that so that we don't forget it afterwards. Thank you.
I'll type the name here. Andrea.
Bye, William. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, William.
And I would really like to discuss the testing from the perspective. Actually, I don't want to jump on the.
Yeah, no worries. Let's see. I think we have covered at least the topic regarding the metrics and the functional unit for now, as well as the infrastructural requirements. So I think testing can be a good point since you also would really like to cover it right now, Nikki. So we can take it.
Yeah, I think it's great to have that we're going to do like a deep dive question time when we're not planning the pipeline, and we can really learn more about, Melissa, what you've just discussed, and to understand the kernel event rates a little bit better, to be able to measure and that. What I wanted to bring up is the integration tests that Falco has. So we've established that those are Firecracker micro VMs, and currently in an Ansible configuration. Now the next step is to see, right, so Leo's suggestion was we can at least use, oh, Leo disappeared. Okay, because I wanted to ask him a question. Anyway, so we can at least use the integration test, maybe simplify, like use the most simple scenario that we can take from the integration test. The question is, how much of the Ansible configuration or the micro VM setup do we want or need?
Yeah, so first of all, I wanted to make a big disclaimer. We don't need micro VMs. Just to be very clear. So those tests were specifically because we need to ensure that Falco runs on different architectures, different kernel versions, different distros. This is why we also ask for a server, an Equinix server, so that we can test all of them in a CI fashion. You don't need this to run Falco or deploy Falco. The reason we mentioned it was exactly because of that, because our whole CI pipeline, and I have 2 links to share, also communicates with that Equinix server on CNCF side. It's, has these Ansible playbooks, and then we have GitHub workflows that do all these steps. So I was just proposing to look at our CI as an inspiration to perhaps adopt something similar. I think, Nikki, you mentioned, or what I read was K6 load test. So I was just briefly looking over it, and it sounds amazing to me at first look. And we could maybe do something similar where we have the GitHub workflows, we have some Ansible playbooks, and they launch these K6 load tests. They do other things like downloading, deploying some configuration. I think there's a lot of details, but at first just decide what technology we want to use in the framework. And one thing I have to say is that there's always so many choices. It's hard to make a decision. So it's just a personal thing I've learned, that sometimes it's better to make a decision and then leave the door open to say it didn't work or it doesn't work. Let's pick something different than delaying it too much. But it's just my personal feedback. And
I agree. Yeah.
we're totally open to, if you don't want to use Ansible and something else or is better, we will not have any problems to adjust. We'll just go with the flow.
Yeah, so it's good to hear that K6 could be an option. Do you think we could create a spike to see? Oh,
I just
thank you very
posted
much.
the 2 links that would be relevant to look how we have it integrated between those two repos. But again, we don't need the micro VMs.
Yeah, good. That's why we have bare metal. Love Equinix. Okay. We do need to make a decision. I just want to know, I think it would be good to know if K6 is even an option to run the load test, the benchmark test for Falco. K6, I believe, is written, some of it is written in JavaScript, which might be an issue or not. I'm not sure, but I believe that's what K6 uses primarily, and so I am not sure if it's the right tool for what we want to do. Does anyone here have experience with writing K6 benchmark tests? No. Okay. I think we need to think on this a little bit more. would someone like to investigate this?
We can at least create an issue on this, Nikki, I think, so that we can also have the possibility for maybe Ima, who also mentioned that she had some experience with K6, and maybe others also to contribute.
Yeah, we can do that asynchronously and ping Ima, since she has experience with K6 and said she would like to take that piece.
But if someone wants to take the lead already, that's also awesome.
Maybe it's related to this point. I had a question. It's fine to run these tests, for example, for Falco on just one K-node. I will though have to say, because of the scaling factor being the kernel event rate, if there's just Falco running and maybe containerd and nothing else, Falco will consume no resources. I can already predict that one. So there needs to be those synthetic workloads as in other applications running, specifically for something like Falco. It may not be the case for other projects. They may be more scaling just by the number of requests, users, or so it's fine. They don't need other stuff running at the same time to get meaningful metrics, performance metrics, and benchmarking. And that way, Falco, I think it's very different, because Falco in and of itself, it does nothing. It only monitors what other workloads are doing, basically. So if there's no other workloads doing anything, there's nothing to monitor, basically. Other than, sure, there's Kubernetes running itself. There's always a bunch of syscalls going on a system, but it will not cause Falco CPU to go up in any meaningful way.
Melissa, which is the link that you sent before? There's two. There's one roles and
yeah,
reusable
so
kernel tests.
I can probably repost that with more. The one repo, the kernel testing one, we just define these micro VMs and the Ansible playbooks, and the other one, the lips one, is the actual GitHub CI that launches these tests.
Right.
Let me write that repost.
So roles bootstrap is one of the. Could you point us to? Sorry, completely new to the code base. What
yeah,
would
I
be?
also didn't work on that one. So that's the other guys who worked on that part. Yep.
It would be great to find like one of the simplest integration tests runs that we can that we can start with, so that we can understand what the steps are, and then we can move from there. Since we know that there is already an existing, there are integration tests, we just need to understand them, what they do, and then we can go from there, like in terms of tooling, etc.
I think maybe a comment just sparked a realization on my end that I think I need to do a better job to write out that basically for Falco, there is no integration test. I mean, we do end-to-end tests to make sure we get events and they're all correct, but there's no, as in other applications, because basically what you have to do is just deploy Falco and run it. And then just let it run for some time, and then you check on the performance metrics. And the way you gauge the test, how much it will stress Falco, is by deploying other applications. So I don't know what a good language or how we can define this. I think we need a better official definition of how that tool is so very different from many other tools.
Yeah, so like a end-to-end test rather than integration test, I agree. For example, what we did with Flux was that we have Flux running. It's useful to measure when it's idle without doing anything, and then we create an application, just a tiny microservice, and we create that through Flux, and then we maybe do an update. And so that reconciliation is the functional unit. So it definitely will be an end-to-end test with another microservice that we like. That's something we have to establish as well, what we're going to use. But I think that does that sound kind of like what we will do with Falco? Like we just let it run and then we deploy something, and then I'm not sure, still learning how Falco will react to based on what, but that's what I'm trying to understand as well.
Yeah, I mean, the best would be just to deploy a whole bunch of Wild West to that keynote, but have it scripted so we can replay it. And I think Marlo made some suggestions, like the hotel reservation, some sort of benchmarking. I can find that link again. That could be one synthetic workload we can try, but perhaps do you have other plans to create synthetic workloads? Are there any other CNCF projects that depend on it? I'm pretty sure there must be other projects that are also kind of workload dependent, as in their consumption.
I know that, like, I'm not sure if that would be applicable here, but still, this is something I've seen during KubeCon and Cloud Native Con that Argo CD showed. They have like a functionality where you could basically generate hundreds and hundreds of applications up and running. So it's taking the specific repos. I don't remember the technical details exactly, but it takes like a bunch of different applications from the public repos on GitHub, and then it deploys those applications to stress test Argo CD and how it will be able to reconcile all these applications at once. So it's using it to stress test its control plane. And this functionality, now I'm not sure how it will kind of perform outside of Argo CD. I think it's probably more of a built-in functionality, but that was still something that could be. It looked very, very easy to make it. It's just a switch, a feature toggle or a feature setting that they turned on, and then it kind of started spinning this up. So if we find something like this, or maybe even apply this functionality if it's possible, then there could be, that way we could probably also stress test Falco in a way, since we will then try together.
I just saw a comment from so big +1. I also just saw a comment from Nantesh. We're also looking into various attack scenarios, so that's not what this green review is about. So if Falco testing, if Falco works and detects the threat it detects, that's just purely Falco project. And if you're interested in that, we can probably chat on the Falco side and open a ticket and enhance end-to-end testing on the Falco side. But I just wanted to say that this working group here is really just about benchmarking how much resources Falco uses, regardless of if it actually detects attacks or not. if that makes any sense. Just to also for Christina and Nikki, we don't want to misuse that infrastructure to perform tests that are out of scope, basically.
But should we look at triggering some sort of finding, like even such as like the discovery? Because I looked a little bit at Falco. Say it looks for files going being created in directories that are being monitored as a particular type of rule. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's an intrusion or malware, it's just monitoring. Is that, do you think that's a worthwhile use case to consider triggering those type of use cases?
Yep. An application that writes a whole bunch of files or does a lot of file IO, file manipulation would be great for stress testing. And the same applies for an application that does a lot of I just say general network activity. would work as well. And the way we can just some details, we can just write a little bit more noisy Falco rules so that we also test the user space parsing and processing of these events. So there are so many factors that can drive CPU, but the one single factor that is the most dominant one is just how much syscalls are going on that server. Because first in the kernel, we have to trace all of the syscalls. Some of them we're interested in or not. But if there's a lot of syscalls happening that we're interested in, we have to put them on a buffer that's shared between kernel and user space, and then we have to do further processing. So it's just a very simple mathematical equation. The more events we push up to user space, the more work we also have to do there. And that also drives CPU. But the single most factor is really just how many system calls that are relevant for threat detection are going on in that server. And those are the basic ones every application does.
I think I'm starting to understand. What we want to do is with the K6 tests, for example, we would actually be targeting the application and maybe making it, or X number of applications that Falco is watching, do a lot of IO activity, or that would be the simplest thing that we can do for one application or multiple applications. And then, does that make sense? So the load testing is actually just targeting the demo, the microservice itself, and not interacting at all with Falco.
Yes.
I feel like this is obvious, but it just clicked in my brain. So maybe for someone else as well.
And if you can remember this, and then we write down a nice paragraph for everyone, it would be amazing, just to maybe have the better language. Then I may not have done a good job at first explaining.
No, I think it's just the context, it helps a lot. Thank you for explaining it. Great. Okay, so I feel like we need to find some kind of test microservice that we can somehow make it do certain, like writing on disk or something like that. Antonio?
Yeah, so Melissa, you mentioned that it would be nice to have an application which is basically syscall intensive. I was wondering if you maybe already had an idea, like because you said like the more system calls you have, the better it is to test Falco. Do you maybe have experience, like, since like it sounds like your background is a lot systems in general, so you might have already something in mind?
The question was for Christina or for?
Oh, probably for you, Melissa.
Yeah, it was for you, sorry.
Yeah, it really depends on I just work in real production environments, so I have to deal with the Wild West on whatever application my company is deploying. I would really just target for the network and the file system IO sort of. If you have applications that do a lot in that space, that will be very good to stress test. That's basically the syscalls that you see. I mean, in Linux, everything is a file. It kind of makes a lot of sense. So those are the more intensive ones. So there's a nature ranking in system calls. For example, newly spawned processes, there may be some applications that do that a lot, but statistically across multiple applications, execve, execv-et, and those sort of system calls, there are much, much lower in volume compared to just literally open-et, open by handle-et sort of system calls if you just open a file, because that happens so often also natively in the background, how Linux works.
But just to understand, like a simple, like maybe it's too simple and too stupid, right? Like, but maybe just a simple Python script that does a lot of curl, for example, and I don't know, writes to a lot of different files, and a while loop would do, right? Like this would stress both file system and network? Is like too simple, or like this would do?
We can try. I'm suspecting Falco will be having super low CPU if we just deploy, I don't know, two or three toy applications. So if I think it's one of the hardest problems to create realistic synthetic workloads. So, every company has production, and every company struggles to create QA testing and canary that actually reflects what you're going to hit in production. I think that's the big problem. So I can just tell from experience that resource utilization for Falco, when I do QA testing, it's just not reflective of what's going on in production. That's the unfortunate truth for a lot of companies to create realistic synthetic workloads that really stress.
Anders?
So I feel like are we going to have test cases per open source project that we're evaluating, or be a generic test case that should be applicable to any open source project, CNCF project, as we gonna evaluate in the future? If that's the case, then we could keep Falco aside, come up with some generic test which is consistently across, which has many things involved, syscalls, some real services which are hosting over load balancer, something like that, like which has cron jobs services. At the end, the goal is to mimic the production sort of environment. We could target CPU utilization to close to 70-80% CPU memory as well, so something more generic, and then come back to Falcos if that matches that requirement. What are your thoughts there?
If we could get to that point, have real services and have that just running, it would be the best scenario for then just deploying Falco on that node and have it run in the background.
That I like the idea of running the same, of doing the same, performing the same actions to the workload for all the CNCF projects that are, like, for example, if we have a set of tests that focus on syscalls, this is what we have created for Falco, but we can also run it for other CNCF projects, and we can continue adding to that list, but we can always run those tests for all projects, even if some have make no difference, or we will find out.
I think maybe that this could also be a part of the same issue on the testing side, not only in terms of which tool we will use, but generally what kind of tests, like what kind of applications we could use.
If I have to say so, it's gonna be the most difficult part of all. Everyone is struggling, and I think that's also one of the reasons why, for example, SREs in my organization, they're so excited about our collaboration with you guys.
Then you could probably reuse these tests also to to test it in the Falco context. But at least one I linked.
Every organization, they want these perfect synthetic tests, but it's really hard to get them. Yeah.
I think sorry.
No, sorry, Nikki. Just want to point out that we have 3 minutes left.
Yes.
So you get to say the last comments, but I think we need to just be aware of that.
That Marlo has experience with high performance computing, and I really look forward to her input. I think not this month, but from November on, I think she will be more available. And there's also some HPC folks at Grafana, and I will ask if, because I think we can learn a lot from that, because there is a science behind what we are trying to do that we can learn from.
Christina, Nikki, if I may suggest for the next meeting, so I can join again, could we focus on just how to get Falco deploy, how to get it running, the whole CI integration, the pipeline? That may be the easier first task than getting the synthetic workloads to a point. Yeah, that's realistic. Kind of, we can track it as 2 separate projects. So create realistic workloads that do not just benefit Falco, but also other projects.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Great. Then we can ensure that we could target that, and I think this is also something that we were looking into getting as a step 1 to get some kind of automation, some infrastructure as code in place as well, so that we could deploy Falco on our infra and make it up and running first. So that sounds good. Now we have one minute left regarding the goals that you mentioned, Melissa, for kind of when we could have that tooling. We have in the design doc a separate section on kind of our goals, short term and long term. That I think they kind of align to what you have proposed as well in the GitHub issue. But if you or anyone in the group has any suggestions to these goals, please add that in the document as well. But in the last meeting, I think we went through them, and there was agreement upon this being the initial draft for the goals, and then we may adjust. All right, then I think this is it for today. Thank you so much, Melissa, for taking the time again and joining the meeting. And this was a really good and useful discussion for us. Then we have a few action items to follow up upon. So thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, please add them to the GitHub issues or Slack or the design doc in the meantime. And we'll talk in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.